Welcome everyone. Welcome Peter. Yep, we're going to hear Peter talk this morning. Most of us know Peter through his involvement with the security at SHtory, but this morning Peter's not going to talk to us about security shutters, but camera shutters. So this is Peter's incredible talent, and he is, I suppose, the official photographer for the SHtory. But we will find out. So very warm welcome, Peter, and over to you.
Thank you very much. A bit of technology to go through. I'm going to try and share my screen and then cause everyone death by PowerPoint. So let's have a go at this. Bear with me. Now then, with a bit of luck, you will be able to see that slide. And so this talk I've called The Perilous Journey of a Jewish Amateur Photographer. And for those of you that are good at Hebrew, I've written it out for you above that. And really, I want to tell you my story as a photographer. And this is what I'm going to cover. I should say that I need to talk a bit about my bar mitzvah. I want to show you a great number of pictures that I've taken, and every one of these pictures has got a backstory. I'm trepidating now because some of my wonderful friends from the Pinner Camera Club have joined, and they know a lot of my secrets already. But I want to talk about my teachers. These are people from the shul who you will know. And then I'm going to focus really much of the talk on how to take a Jewish portrait, which is very different to any other type of portrait. I'll talk a little bit about what happens with Heather and me when it comes to photography, then a little bit more about the shul, and finally I'm going to talk about the Geniza in Cairo. At any point during the discussion, please do interrupt me. Just turn yourself off mute, and when you've raised your question, then I will try and answer it. So what I have to tell you is that I was born at a very early age, and my maternal grandfather was an optician, but he was also a photographer. My uncle was an artist, a very good artist, and also a photographer. And in fact, he wrote a book which comprised the signatures of all the great artists, and it's used as a reference work by police and art dealers all over the world. His name was Hilly Kaplan, and he mastered every type of brushstroke and everything like that, because he was also quite a good forger. My father was a photographer and an engineer, and he had a toy shop in East Street, Elephant and Castle, if anyone's ever been there. And so I was able to play with every toy going right from when I was born. By the way, I've learned over the years that you shouldn't make a talk last longer than about 3 or 4 hours. So I'll try and reduce what I say quite a lot. When I was at school, I once did win an art prize, and that was a great surprise to everyone, given that I'm a scientist. But getting up to my bar mitzvah, you have to imagine my surprise when I was given a camera for my bar mitzvah. And that really started me off on my photographic career. It was a Brownie 127. It was a wonderful camera, and there were no controls and nothing you had to do. Just as an aside, I ought to mention that Heather, my wife, my beloved, is an optician. She takes great pictures because she knows how to compose them. I've spent thousands and thousands of pounds on equipment, but I still don't know how to take a picture. So one day I hope to do that. Just before I really get into my talk, I want to show you some pictures I've taken, and I've extracted some with a Jewish theme. This is a picture of Heather, which the thing that I really loved about this picture was the way that the light caught on the back of her hair. And she's praying in a temple, and it gives a kind of peaceful prayerful image, which I always enjoyed when I looked at it. Can you now see a rabbi signing a ketubah?
Yeah.
So this was a wedding that we were invited to in Israel, and everybody else, including the professional photographers, were taking pictures under the chuppah and of the bride and of the groom. And I wanted to capture what was a religious element of the wedding. And therefore, I thought watching the rabbi sign the ketubah was something that would capture that, and I think it did. I was invited by West London Synagogue to go and take pictures of their beautiful temple inside. I don't know if anyone's ever been in there, but this particular picture was taken by the organ, and those gold tubes are the organ pipes. Of course, we don't have them in our shul, but they have many in West London. This picture was actually taken in the park opposite the Knesset in Jerusalem, but I did add a little extra bit because it seemed to me to be something coming down from the heavens. And so I added this space vehicle into the picture, which added a bit of extra interest. I should tell you that I put this picture in to be judged, and the judge spent really 10 or 15 minutes trying to work out what I'd done. At least it seemed like that. I don't know if anyone recognizes this picture, but this is actually Kikar Hamadina in Tel Aviv. You just go up Weizmann from the Hilton Hotel, and it has a religious theme in that it's where the shops are. And Heather, anyway, finds a lot of religious peace by spending money in the shops. She'll probably kill me if she's listening, but please don't tell her if she's not. And finally, my friend Steve Cohen from Pinner Camera Club, who's watching, loves this image. This image was taken in Petra in Jordan, and we took a trip from Eilat by coach. And absolutely everyone who goes there has got a picture of the treasury, which was the building featured in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. But I happened to spot this cave, which was absolutely fascinating for me. You can look at it and see all sorts of things in it. Another one of my colleagues from Pinner Camera Club had a look at this and said, you know, what you need to do is put some scale into the picture. So this Arab in the flowing robes, I did take a picture of him, but he certainly wasn't there when I took the picture. And he has been added afterwards just so you know how big the caves really are. I'd now like to talk about my teachers. I'm going to talk about my teachers from our shul, but I would also credit all my friends from the Camera Club who've taught me so much over the years. So these are my two current teachers, Harav Wilansky and Harav Bray, both of whom are quite famous within our shul, and both of whom are actually great photographers. Hyman Wilansky is a marvelous photographer. When the old shul was being demolished and when the new shul was being built, hardly anybody knows, but he captured nearly 1,000 images so that we can track what happened with the shul. Jaime also made sure that I did my share of the work, and one day between us we're going to have to create a book telling the whole story of the construction. Jaime's got a really wonderful eye for a visual story, and the other thing I'd have to say is that he's had more cameras than anybody I've ever known. Every week he says, I've got a new one, and it's wonderful. He still takes great pictures, whatever the camera. With regard to Bobby has got the most marvelous ability to look at a scene and capture it. It's a very rare skill, but he will see the thing that's important in the whole image. Bobby has attended every event that's ever happened in our shul well before Heather and I arrived. And he's got videos and pictures, and it's a great archive which we must deal with at some point. I also would pay a tribute to Daniel Manson, who takes lovely pictures too, and her picture of the time lapse of the shul being built is still visible in the lobby. I just want to show you one of Jaime's pictures, because he manages to find absolute beauty. Those who attend the morning minion might remember I mentioned that it's crocus, daffodil, and other flowering time of the year. So Jaime went straight out and took this picture. Based on what Jaime does, I actually modified it, and this is my picture of a crocus, which I hope you enjoy. Bobby capturing scenes. This is one of his scenes of the old shul. I'm sure we all love and remember that. I decided to take a picture of the old shul, which I've never published before, and I want to show that to you. What I did, I created a mathematical panorama of the shul, and I'll just let you look at that for 1 minute, because it tried to capture 360 degrees every feature of the old shul building. I will publish it one day, but I'm still not quite happy with it. So those are some Jewish portraits which I just wanted to share with you. Well, not portraits, but that does take me to taking a Jewish portrait. And Jewish portraits are different because people have a view of what they really look like. And if you take a picture of someone, they want to see what is the best thing about them. And what I've really learned over the past few years is that it doesn't matter whether people are handsome, beautiful, ugly, fat, thin, whatever it is. If you look at their face, every person has got the most incredible amount of character. And the secret of taking a good Jewish portrait is to find that character. There are some rules here. And for Lawrence, who wanted to learn something, here are some rules, Lawrence. Any picture you take, it needs to tell a story. If you just take a picture of record, as they're called, that isn't so interesting. But if you can find a story, and taking a picture of someone's face is fun. There's a rule called the rule of thirds, which tells you where you should position things. You've got to have something that's interesting to look at, as well as the face maybe. Maybe it's on the face what's interesting. And don't they say the eyes are the windows of the soul? And so finding the eyes in people is really good. If you're outside, someone said take the sun over your shoulder. I'd like to mention that mobile phones these days are absolutely fantastic. And when you're taking a portrait, that is the only time, I don't know if you can see it on the camera because I'm sharing my screen, but that's the only time you should ever have the camera that way round. Normally, if you're taking a picture with a mobile phone, especially if it's a landscape, hold the camera landscape and you'll get really lovely pictures. But anyway, my rules aren't the convention rules. I like to cheat. And here is a quite famous portrait, which I have seen hanging in the Louvre. And the big question arises, this is a talk about Jewish portraits. So was Leonardo Jewish? That's the question. And it is said that his mother, Katerina, was Jewish, although there's been a lot of research on him, and it's not absolutely certain. But what is known is that he knew an awful lot about the Torah and Kabbalah and things like that. And there are prohibitions in the Torah, which I will come to in a minute. But the trouble is with Leonardo's work is I don't really like that smile. So I want to show you what we might do about it. Can I ask if you can see a portrait of Mona Lisa? And so I never did like her smile. And I hope you can still see her. And so therefore I decided I needed to alter what she looks like.
That is the new smile.
Can you see a change in her smile?
Yes.
Right. So now I want to revert to Jewish portraits. So people often tell me they really don't like it. They might say my nose is too big, so I can do all kinds of things with the nose, or I can make the nose thicker or thinner. The smile we've done. Maybe they say I look too fat or too thin, so I can raise the forehead. Is it visible?
We're not seeing what you're doing, Peter. We're not seeing what you're doing.
You're not seeing it?
No.
We're not seeing any of that.
Okay, if I move it there, can you see anything?
Yes.
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 Right,
That's the one.
this is wonderful. So let's have another go. So I don't like her smile, so I can change her smile.
I prefer the old one.
Actually, her forehead, I've never thought that was the right proportion, so I'm going to make the forehead a little bit bigger. We can change the shape of the face. We can make her chin go up or down, and the jawline can change. So people often ask me when I take a picture, they say, do you know, I really don't like my face, it's too thin or too fat. So I have the technology to change that round. And one of the things that I have done before is what's known as a Hollywood makeover. And that is really quite good fun. And the thing about pictures, it's all about the pixels and it's about the light. And there is nothing that you can't change. Okay, so that's a little bit of fun with the Mona Lisa. I am now going to put that away, don't save, and hopefully I can get back to the presentation. So let's go back here, give me 1 second. Stop screen sharing, screen share, PowerPoint, share. Right, can you see a slide which says, I'm not sure I like the smile?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wunderschön. So now this is actually a lecture, a Jewish lecture, so I'm sorry to go religious on you for 1 minute. But there's this injunction known as Aniconism. Does anyone know what Aniconism is, or would you like me to explain it?
No.
Is it Annie Cohen, is it supposed to be?
It should be Annie Cohen, Bobby. Yes, you're absolutely right, but it's actually Aniconism.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is, for monotheistic Abrahamic religions, we don't generally do material representations of natural or supernatural events. So for example, in a shul, you will never see a statue or a picture of a person. And it is actually quite a big halakhic question for us photographers, and I'm sure Bobby and Jaime know all about this, about whether or not we're allowed to actually take pictures, never mind portraits. But luckily there's some help. So I'm going to talk about divine images, the 10 Commandments, and a little bit about other sources. For those of you that like Hebrew, I've written Vayem Elokim Nasher Adon B'Tzalmenu, etc., etc. But what it is God said, let's make man in our image after our likeness. So we're not allowed to take pictures that represent God. So if we take a picture of a human being, the trouble is, are we taking an image of God? And that is there's a lot written about that. And in the old days, not just in Jewish religion, but also in Islam, there were very severe punishments for making images of people. the whole point here, where am I? There, is it's an injunction really against idolatry. And you mustn't make a sculptured image or any likeness of what is in the heavens above or on the earth below. So therefore, there is a problem for photographers. I won't go through these detailed sources, but very luckily, some of the more lenient Torah commentators, and indeed the one that we all follow, says that you are allowed to take images as long as you don't idolize the person that you've been taking the picture of. So that enables me now to look at portraits of people. But I want to start off with one of the great masters. Does everyone know this picture?
The Scream.
The Scream, and this is by Edvard Munch. And it was, do you know when it was painted?
Yeah.
1893. And actually, it's a master work, because one of the things that is really nice to do in a picture is to tell a story. And he has managed to tell this story of this desperate person. And the brushstrokes are incredible and the colors are incredible. And it's the thing I really would love to do one day if I ever take a picture, which is to capture this feeling and this real story. And he made lots of different types of images of it, but I'm going to focus on this particular one. Given the skills I've just shown you, you take a picture of a person, and this picture actually has been published a few times in the Shul magazines and conferences and things like that. I took it about 4 or 5 years ago in Rabbi Shlomo's garden in Hampstead. It was a lovely day, but I've since come to realize that he's a bit pale in that image. So I did a Jewish transformation on it, and I gave him a bit of a suntan, which I hope he liked. But as a matter of fact, a bit more transformation on it, and it looks so much better in black and white, because you know, the thing about our rabbi is his eyes. His eyes are just fantastic. And why do we all love him? Other people say it's because he gives words of comfort, consolation, he looks after us. But in actual fact, his eyes are laughing. And so if you really look for his character, that is where it is. Nevertheless, he's a human being. And what I would say is, probably this is what he really feels like, having spent the day with us and teaching us all the things that he does. And don't we love it? Right, moving on very rapidly. Another thing that happens when you're a Jewish photographer, and I don't know if this happens to Jaime or Bobby, I'm sure it does, or to any of my friends from Pinner Camera Club, but I get invited, and so does Heather, to an awful lot of do's and functions. And we always think it's because we're lovely people and people want our company. But usually sometime between the invitation and the actual function itself, people will say, oh, and by the way, Peter, will you bring your camera? And there are good reasons for that. One is maybe people think that the pictures are okay, but the other is often that it costs £3,000 or £4,000 to have a photographer. Sorry, that's very cynical of me. I'm sure they only invite me because they want it. And I've even been asked, can we borrow your cameras? So that is something that happens along the journey of a Jewish amateur photographer. But actually I don't mind it, because we do get to lots of lovely places and meet lots of lovely people. The other approach that's often used is people will say, can you take some pictures? It's for the shul. And before we moved to South Hampstead, this happened to me quite a lot. I was in Northwood Synagogue before, and so a number of members of the Pinner Camera Club. And actually, I love doing work for the shul. It's a great honor to be asked. And what would happen is someone from the shul would say, we're having this and this event. Could you take the pictures for the shul? And they would expect that not only was it the still pictures, but videos as well. And so actually, very fortunately, all these members of the camera club at shul, and so the team of us would get together and we'd set it up. So when we moved to Southampton, which was actually in 2013, I was absolutely delighted when someone asked me if I'd take pictures for the shul. Since when I've taken more than 2,000. Bobby's taken infinite number. Jaime's taken really a lot. But I just want to show one picture I took, because this is one of my favorite pictures. So I don't know if anyone's seen this picture before, but I was asked to do a picture which would be suitable for a brochure that Rabbi Eli was putting together, and also one that might be useful for the Shul magazine. So I want to just tell you the backstory. And when you take a picture, you actually do research and you have to think about it in order to come up with a picture that's pleasing. I happened to be doing security, which Lawrence mentioned before, the night before, and I noticed that at a certain time, the lights came on in the shul, which showed its true natural beauty of our new shul. And so I worked out what time it was. And when you're taking a picture, there really is a limited amount of time when the light is just perfect. And so I came at exactly 7:30, knowing I had about 15 minutes to capture this picture. When I came the next night, there was a car parked in front of the shul, and I was in terrible trouble, because if I had to take the picture of the car, okay, I can play around with Photoshop, but it would have been too complicated to fake this picture. So I went to security, and there was a guard in the security hub, and I said, do you know whose car that is? And he said, well, yes, actually, there's someone cooking in the kitchen, because the following day we were going to have a great banquet. It wasn't Belshazzar's feast, and it wasn't Ahasuerus's Purim party, but nevertheless, it was an important shul event. And it just so happened that it was Samuel Bray who was preparing the food downstairs. So I rushed downstairs, still not knowing if it was his car. And I said, Samuel, is that your car outside? He said, yes, it is. I said, can you please move it? And he said, I'll spoil the food. I said, I don't care, you'll spoil the picture. And he rushed up, and in 3 minutes, the car had gone. And I got my picture just before the light vanished. And for me, this is the image of our shul. And the rest is history, as they say. So just really to wrap up, I've probably got about another 5 or 6 minutes that I want to talk, after which please feel free to ask me anything you want. A huge problem is storing material. And if any of you have been to Cairo, you will definitely know about, and even if you haven't, the Geniza. The Geniza is a fantastic storage space. It stored about 300,000 Jewish manuscripts in Ezra's synagogue, and they covered a range of about 1,000 years. And the technology that was employed in those days was terrific. It was paper, and paper lasts for an awful long time. And if you go back even further than that, our Torah is written on hide, and that lasts for even longer than paper. And in fact, the Torah has been copied a lot of times, but over the years, there are only 12 different versions of the Torah scrolls around the whole world, which is incredible. And the differences between them are very small. I think there's only like about 10 letter errors between the different versions. So what is required here is to be able to store material. And the trouble with our new technology, which is all digital, my Geniza looks a bit like this. And I have stored around 250,000 images and videos, all taken since my bar mitzvah. And this constitutes about 70 terabytes of data for those who have technical inclinations. But the big challenge here is that our next generation may not even be able to read them. I don't know if anyone remembers the Polly Peck case, where this Turkish fellow ran off with all the money to Turkish Cyprus. And actually, my cousin happened to be his accountant, but I won't go into that completely. But he came back to England, Azul Nadir, and the aim was to reconstruct his accounts, which had been stored electronically. And to this day, they've never been able to pick it up from that media. So what we have to do, especially those of us who've been recording what happens in the shul, is work out a way that future generations, our grandchildren, can know the story that we've captured in pictures. So anyway, Lawrence, just to put you on notice, I'm just going to show 18 more of my pictures. There's a couple with backstories. Well, in fact, they all have a backstory, but I'm only going to mention a couple, and then I'll hand back to you. So here's one of my pictures. This required very high-speed flash to capture a water drop falling into the water. This picture did quite well for me in competition, and I still enjoy looking at this particular one. Here is an animal picture. Animal pictures are always good, but animal faces, we're not supposed to compare them to human beings, but I can also see character in this meerkat. When you travel as a photographer, you take an awful lot of stuff with you. So I thought it would be fun to make an X-ray picture of what I carry around with me at one point. Here is a picture that did quite well for me. This picture has a title which is called Mowing One's Lawn. The backstory here is interesting because round me there were thousands of tourists taking pictures with their cameras. I had my camera mounted on a tripod, and as I was taking the picture, 5 policemen came towards me from different directions. And actually I thought, oh my God, what's going to happen here? And one of the policemen said, we've been watching you on CCTV taking pictures of the palace. What is your intention? So I said, well, I'm just taking pictures. And they said, are you a professional photographer? At which point I did start laughing and said, oh, bless you, no one's ever called me a professional photographer before. And it turns out that if you take pictures of a royal park, and the Buckingham Palace is in a royal park, you actually need a license, and it costs 500 quid. But anyway, I didn't get arrested. They asked me to send my pictures to the Royal Park's photographic team, and I got back the most wonderful email saying, we love your pictures, please can you send us some more? This is another Jewish type of picture. Heather in Selfridges trying on the shoes. This is has a Jewish connection because this is Bethesda in Barbados in the south of the island. And the cloud formation was just wonderful, and the light on the rocks, I really felt worthy of a capture. The pen is mightier than the sword, and so I took this picture. This picture I actually took round the Ruislip Lido, if anyone's ever walked around there. And some pictures are what are called grab shots. And I was just so lucky. I had my telephoto lens on the camera at the time, and this bird flew over, heron actually, and I snapped it, and it was the best bird picture I've ever taken, I think. I like playing with Photoshop, and so I made this image, which did quite well. Here is the actual device. I don't know if you can see that on your screen, but I made the reflection on there, and that worked quite well. Taking pictures, portraits of children is very wonderful. I love taking pictures of my grandchildren. This happens to be Leo when he was a baby, but you don't have to have eyes open. What you want is a story. And I thought this one does tell quite a nice story of peace and sleep. This picture isn't my greatest ever picture, but I still love it because I imagined anyway that Heather, whose finger that is, was operating the phone. I did put this one in for competition, and the judge made everyone laugh in the contest room by saying, "That's an awful lot of finger," he said. There you go. I love this picture because it's got action in it. It's not a technically perfect picture, but if you walk around the boating lake in Regent's Park, you see Egyptian geese, and they're very aggressive creatures. And this one was about tap its partner. I can hear a phone. Can that be muted?
Miriam, could you mute, please? Could you press your mute button?
Thank you. Right, so that's the Egyptian goose. And anyone can take a picture of a bird, but having it in action is the story. This is a picture taken at we went on a cruise to Norway, and we saw this snorkeling man feeding the fish. It was just incredible, and the colors are so beautiful. Had to take a picture. Heather swears blind that she took this picture, but I think it was me. With Steve Cohen, who's probably still on the line if he hasn't fallen asleep, we went to Richmond Park, or one of those, at 5 o'clock in the morning during the rutting season, and we took wonderful pictures of the deer who are mating and rutting. Very dangerous to go near, but to get a good picture, you have to be a bit near. This is a picture which probably hasn't been photoshopped, believe it or not, but I took it in the cactus house in Kew Gardens. It's just got real humor in it for me. Water drops are always lovely to look at. This is a picture I took at in Atlanta at the aquarium, where they had these wonderful Japanese jellyfish swimming in the water, and the lighting was incredible, so I just had to snap it. This is my last picture. This picture has a backstory too. We went to the Sandy Lane Hotel in Barbados, and this bird, which is a robin, believe it or not, like my surname, was perched on the back of a chair. And so I took the picture, and it looked really ordinary. And so then I cut the bird out, did a Gaussian rotational swirl on the chair in the background and put the bird back. And it just is a picture that always gives me a lot of pleasure just to look at, and it did okay in the competitions. So that is the end of my talk. I thank you for listening and would welcome any questions or comments.
Thank you, Peter. That was that really was wonderful, and I just loved looking at the pictures that you've taken. Really, really stunning, and I'm very lucky because I get to ask you the first question. That's my prize. So I'm actually going to ask you a practical question, Peter, because I've got a problem. I've just received my new camera, and I'm having a problem with it, and I wonder whether you can help me. So my new camera, and I just don't know where to put the USB. I don't know where to plug it in so I can take the digital images out.
Yes.
You help me.
I can help you actually, because can you see what I'm holding up? These are called digits.
Yes.
And so this is a good digital image, and you want to take one finger
Yes.
and stick it up the back of the camera. That's what, yes.
That wasn't in the instruction manual, Peter. I think this was actually your bar mitzvah camera.
It was similar, and I can probably tell you, I can send you an instruction manual. I need to make a few changes, but I will do that.
It actually leads me into my first serious question is for you, what's the difference, and possibly do you miss actual film roll? And do you still use it?
Okay, so film is a fabulous medium, and it gives a particular tone and a particular texture to an image. Now, what's interesting here is when students go and study photography and do media studies, in the first year, they're asked to buy film cameras and not to use digital at all. And there are several reasons for that. One is, with a digital camera, you can take 20 shots and you just throw away the 19 that you don't like, and you've got one. With film camera, you have to take each picture correctly each time. And on a film camera, you've got all these different settings, but you must get all the settings correct. Because, for example, I went to Russia with my father with my film camera, and I took, I think, 10 rolls with 36 frames on each. I don't know if anyone remembers 35mm film like that. And you have no idea till you get home whether any of those pictures are going to be any good. And you pray, actually, that some of them come out, and some of them did, but I didn't show those images today. But let me just check whether I've answered your question for you.
Yeah, I did. Do you still use any film?
I don't anymore. I have to explain, I spent an assurance on equipment, running into the tens of thousands of pounds. And I found actually it doesn't make any difference really what camera you've got. If you can compose the picture and do a Bobby Bray or whatever it is, it's a good picture. It doesn't matter so much what camera you did use. And actually, just building on that theme, if you look at some of the great photographers from history, they had pinhole cameras and they had colloidal silver plates on the back of the monster images. And they took the most incredible pictures, which I would aspire to, but have never reached. So your Brownie box camera you just showed me is a perfectly good piece of equipment to take a good picture. And if you want to know where you can get the film for that, it's B&H Photo in New York on 9th Avenue and 34th.
I'm on my way, thank you. Okay, can I open any questions? Oh, surprise, surprise, Jaime.
Thanks, Lawrence. Peter, that was great, apart from some wrong references to me. Peter, they used to say that the camera never lies. Now, in your case, does your camera ever tell the truth?
Jaime, do you know my friend Steve Cohen?
No.
You must get together because you'll have at least a 3-minute conversation about whether I ever tell the truth. But the debate that you open up is a very interesting one. And is a picture you take a document of record, or is it a work of art? And so I go back to some of the great artists like Renoir or Rembrandt or some of those, and they took beautiful pictures, they painted beautiful pictures which looked something like the subject they were taking, but they weren't a picture of record, they were works of art. And I would say in photography that what you're trying to create is a work of art, not a document of record. If you work for a newspaper, yes, okay, but normally not. And we have long debates about things like that as photographers. But over to you. I mean, I don't know. If you asked me, Jaime, to take your portrait, would you want me to make you look like the handsome man that I know is lurking inside, or do you want me to show what everyone else sees?
I think we start out trying to make a work of art, but it doesn't work out, so it then becomes a document of record. Isn't that the way it works?
Good question.
Peter, first of all, thank you. That was brilliant. And as Jaime says, that's except for some wrong references to me, but thank you for the credits that you did give. What you're just saying about a document of record or a work of art, I think you actually hit both perfectly when you did the 360-degree panorama of the old Shul. I think that was a document of record for sure, and absolutely a work of art too, because I think that is a piece of art. It looks excellent. I love it. Really, really brilliant. Well done.
Well, thank you, Bobby. To you, £2,000, but maybe a discount later.
Yeah, thank you. Very, very good. Thank you.
Marilyn?
Hi, that was so interesting, Peter. I had no idea that you were a photographer. So there you are. That's what my story does, opens up information about everyone. I mean, it just fascinates me. It's not really a question. This is just a statement to say that my late father was a photographer. And when I think how many hours he spent in his darkroom developing and printing those photos, and the kind of photos he took probably wouldn't be allowed today, because lots of them, I've got 30 cousins, and of course you can imagine all the aunts and uncles wanted him to take photographs of all the cousins and babies. Lots of those photos were us naked, sitting on tables, holding a fluffy teddy bear, which of course, I mean, you know, they were very artistic, but I imagine today you're not allowed to do that. The other thing he did was during the war, just after the war, he forged passports for immigrants coming from Europe wanting to settle in Israel. And you couldn't get rolls of films. The only people that had rolls of films was the armed forces. And an uncle of mine who was in the RAF managed to secrete some rolls of Kodak film about his person and gave them to my father, who then went on to take photos and made special stamps out of potato skins and out of potatoes. And they made between them, they forged these photos of passports. And today, I imagine it could be just done at the flick of a finger digitally. So times have really changed in the photographic world.
So, Marilyn, thank you for that. You've got 2 or 3 themes in there, which I'll just try and pick up on. The first is taking pictures of children. This is a serious one. And for those who know, when I've taken pictures in the shul where children are going to be there, I actually carry around a stack of parental consent forms with me. And before I take a picture of any child, I give the parent this document to sign. The reason being that there are very unpleasant people out there. And if you are caught taking pictures of children, there are very serious consequences. So that was an important point to make. Now, your father, being a photographer, And talking of his darkroom, now I have spent time in the darkroom with my uncle and with my grandfather, and it was just absolutely amazing to watch them take the film negative and develop it, and then using the enlarger, print the photo, and you put it in a tray of chemicals, and suddenly this image comes out, and it's totally exciting. These days, of course, we don't have darkrooms or do things like that. Maybe some people do because they still get the sense of fun from it. But you're actually looking at my darkroom, and I'm just going to show you a few things in my darkroom. So people might wonder why I have this ugly cardboard thing here. This contains the canvas, which I put pictures when I print them in. I've got my printer over there when I print. This is my camera here. Don't know if you can see that.
Yeah. Wow.
So, dark rooms have advanced really an enormous amount. But there's nothing like the sense of fun your dad would have got from his darkroom.
Yeah, great fun. Yeah, developing. And I always remember them going into the solution, and we had to count to 10, and we all used to, us kids, there were 3 of us, we had to count Kodak 1, Kodak 2. That was the counting, that for it to suddenly start developing or printing. That's called the printing. The developing was the putting the negatives in, wasn't it? I can't remember which way around it is now.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but sometimes the chemicals would splash on your hand, and you get these dirty brown stains from the silver nitrate. And
yeah,
I remember my grandfather screaming at me once, "Don't lick your finger." I never did suck my fingers. Thank you.
Steve?
Well, I always knew that Peter was up to no good from the time I first saw that Arab up on the side of the treasury at Petra. But I must say, over the years, Peter and I have shared a lot of very interesting visits out with our cameras. And to this day, I always run pictures by Peter before a competition. So tomorrow night, Pinner Camera Club has a competition, and Peter's made his usual sage comments about them, and he does have a very good eye, but certainly never believe a picture that Peter has ever taken as being what the camera originally saw.
To those of my friends in Southampton who don't know Steve Cohen, Dr. Steve Cohen, by the way, he is a master photographer who takes the most incredible pictures of animals and insects and things like that. He has been one of my great teachers and mentors. And because he always criticizes what I do and suggests unbelievably that I fake some of my images that I create, I don't know why he does that. It's really good fun laying into images that he takes and finding out everything that's wrong. And there are other people on this call that I could say the same thing about. Thank you, Steve.
Anyone else with a question or a comment? Just go to page 2. No. Okay. Well, thank you again, Peter. That was wonderful. I learned a lot. I really did. Again, some of your photos, some of your pictures are magnificent. Do you have a favorite one? I mean, is there one photo that sort of defines your skill?
I really do think the one of the shul is one that has combined all the things I've learned over all these years. But
Is that because you were taking a photograph of your heart?
Yes, I think it probably was. But that said, there are many, every picture that I've taken has a story for me. And if there's one bottom line of this discussion, it is that pictures should convey something to the person who's looking at them. And what the photographer hopes to do is create an emotion and a reaction to the image he's created.
Thank you for that. And thank you everybody for joining us. And we have another wonderful My Story next Sunday. So please join us.
We have two more before Pesach.
2 more before Pesach. Thank you, Gillian. Thank you very much. Have a good week, everybody.
Thank you.